Since the 1970s, the Gulf Emirates, led by families that have ruled for about a century, have undergone changes that are both dramatic and unprecedented in the Arab world. But contradictions and confusion remain. Archaic societies rush headlong into the vanguard of modern life, straddling the gap between the West and the Arab world, and all in a notoriously unstable region that has been through 3 wars in the last 30 years and seen an Islamic revolution in neighboring Iran. Yet whether native-born or expatriates, everyone there agrees that the bottom line is absolutely phenomenal and that a kind of euphoria reigns.
Mais c'est un paradis. This is paradise here.
In 40 years, life expectancy has shot up by 20 years. The literacy rate is more than 90%, and significantly, there are more than 200 cell phones per 100 inhabitants. And the emirs have spent $2,000 billion on modernizing their states. $2,000 billion. They had a lot of catching up to do, starting from poverty and desert sands, from nomads in a world without borders, punctuated only by the dunes and the waves of the Persian Gulf. Since the dawn of time, a hidden fortune had been lying beneath their feet. The first wells had been sunk just a few decades earlier. People spoke of black gold, of blue gold, as though the Emirates were a fiction, too good to be true. In one fell swoop, they tipped from one world into another. And since then, it seems like money has afforded infinite possibilities. Despotism and slavery, delusions of grandeur. It's fascinating and provokes cliches. The oil and gas that we need to feed our own expansion has supposedly spoiled their lifestyle. But they're rather pleased about it. In this part of the world, they have had to draw borders, establish order in the desert, and invent cities. Today, a triumvirate of city-states seems to share a common ambition. Doha in Qatar, Abu Dhabi and Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. 5 other, smaller emirates with little-known and mysterious-sounding names also make up the United Arab Emirates. Ajman, Ras Al Khaimah, Al Quwain, Fujairah and Sharjah. But what do we really know about them? Above and beyond the cliches, what are their beliefs, their projects, and what is their history? One of the most eminent historians of the Gulf just happens to be an emir. A short PR film informs us about the emir and his emirate few Westerners have heard of. Population 1 million. Annual growth more than 10%. Oil has been produced since 1974 and gas since 1982. The good times were about to begin. His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al Kazimi is a member of the Supreme Council of the United Arab Emirates and monarch of Sharjah. The historian Emir owns a museum that bears his name, which holds some small personal souvenirs. And one of the world's most extraordinary collections of antique maps. We can learn that the region used to be fairly inhospitable. This coast dangerous and chiefly inhabited by pirates. Pirates? Leave the capital, drive across a bit of desert, and you are there. Around us nothing but sand, but here, restraint and order bless luxury and voluptuousness. Now the sun goes down, tinting dike and town, field, canal, all things in sight, hyacinth and gold, all that we behold slumbers in its ruddy light.
if you stay here the whole day, you won't hear any noise. But here, there are nearly 70 people working, but you can't see them and you can't hear them because they have special corridor to go and special lift to go. And nobody will disturb this place except myself passing, going, and coming. I built it for myself because there's no need disturbance, you know? Because if I am thinking of people, I'm thinking of writing, of thinking, I need calm place. So here I can sit the whole day in my library, nobody can come to me. This is Italian. This is done by Italian. هذا صناعة محلية سيراميك. في ناس يقولون شبيه بالقصر الحمراء يعني، لكن هذا أجمل. You see, I left it as it is, as sample, but this is all, cultivated by myself. That is my manzil, my house. Here is all I done it myself. Piece by piece. This is a book I'm writing now, Al-Qawasim under the British occupation. فهذه الخرائط تأتي متعاقبة مع الاستعمار الغربي في هذه المنطقة. فمنذ البداية كانت الخرائط فقط وصف بسيط يستعمله البرتغاليون، ولا يعطون أي معلومات حتى لا تقع في يد الأعداء. لو نرجع للتاريخ، في سنة 1450 احتلوا الأتراك اسطنبول، وأعلن البابا من روما مقاطعة التجارة مع الشرق كاملة. فاتجه التجار والبحارة إلى البحث عن طريق إلى الهند. ولما وصل هنا فاسكو دي جاما اتصل بالهند وأخذ المنتجات الهندية إلى البرتغال.
This happy Arabia the Portuguese discovered in the 16th century is identical to the one filmed 60 years ago. For centuries, there were no cities to speak of in this part of the world. Encampments, oases, and fishing villages. But one flourishing place of commerce stood out in Qatar, Zubarah.
مدينة الزبارة يعني أقدم ذكر لهذه المدينة كان سنة 1600 يعني في هالفترة. كانت تسكنها قبيلة بن علي، سليم والمعاضيد من نفس القبيلة، وكانت فريحة أيضا قريبة منها، فأيضا كانت هذه من نفس القبيلة العربية، من قبيلة سليم. فهذه المدينة كانت صغيرة جدا، كانت قرية صغيرة، وكان سكانها يعتمدوا على البحرين للتمويل للغوص. بعد 1800 بدأت مدينة الزبارة تتعرض لكثير من الغزوات الخارجية، لأنها بدأت تصبح مطمع، لأن مدينة ثرية وغنية، فأصبحت مطمع لكل يعني حكومة قوية في المنطقة أن تستولي عليها وتسيطر عليها. إن سنة 1830 بدأت القوات التركية مع حكومة البحرين تفرض ضرائب عالية على سكان قطر، وبالتالي حتى يبتعدوا من مناطق سيطرة هذه الحكومات أيضا بدأت تنزح. ففي هذه الفترة الدوحة بدأت تتشكل كمدينة.
People in the Gulf were poor. Their only wealth came from the sea, and it wasn't just sardines. Some citizens actually managed to get pretty rich thanks to the pearl trade. It's a long story. Pearls are celebrated all around the Gulf, with varying degrees of elegance. For centuries, they were one of the rare economic activities in the region, from Kuwait to Dubai, via Qatar. Even so, the people of the Gulf didn't get much of a cut. Most of the profits went to Indian pearl traders in Bombay, where the pearls were then sold and shipped to Europe or America.
بالنسبة للغواصين، يعني كان الغوص بدون معدات، بدون أدوات غوص حديثة، بدون أجهزة اسطوانات ضغط، بدون نظارات، يعني كانت متعبة جدا. الغوص الحر فقط يعني هو كتم النفس، ينزل ما إنه ينزل أول ما ينزل بالحصى، والديين تكون على والديين لابس الديين، أول ما ينزل يكتم النفس لين ما يوصل للقوع، ويقوم بجمع المحار لفترة دقيقتين أو دقيقة و40 ثانية إلى 3 دقائق. الغواص هذا يكون يعني المخضرم مثل ما نقول نحن، نوصل إلى 3 دقائق أو دقيقتين ونص ويطلع.
Former Emirati pearl divers are now subsidized by the government, which provides them with a house, a 4-wheel drive, and even a majlis, or gathering place. They are now part of the native elite.
والله الغوص تعب الأول، وايد تعب، يصيرون 3 شهور 4 شهور عن علم، يمدون مني في الصيف ويجون في ترى القيط، ياخذون في الغوص 3 شهور و4 شهور 3 شهور. هذا اللي الحجن عليه، اللي غيرنا قبل يقولون 4 شهور ياخذون في البحر، ويمدون ثاني ويمدون ثالثة، الرد يسمونه. هذا اللي هو الغوص.
إلى سلمة الشمس كل واحد محصول ماله من المحار، من هذا الصدف هذا، أكل ماشي غير تمر وعيش بس، ويبي وحده الرز بالليل، والتمر الصبح والظهر وبالليل شوي هذا، والماء يعني كوب استكانة شاي هذه بس كل واحد.
The pearl trade grows into a colossal enterprise. Global transactions from Antwerp to New York, Paris and London establish the Gulf people's cosmopolitan credentials. Huge empires are created that are still influential financial players today, like Al Fardan, a former pearl trader from Qatar who diversified his fortune. Banks, jewelry, luxury car dealerships, real estate. But that fortune, which his private museum gives a sense of, started with pearls. an inscrutable private secretary reels off sums that boggle the mind.
12,350,000, 6 million, can say $2 million, 35 million.
هنا أتى البريطانيين وأتوا رحالة وتجار.
The British had felt obliged to go into the Gulf to stop piracy because pirates were coming out of the Gulf from the islands, particularly near the mouth of the Gulf, and preying on shipping going to India.
يعني احنا في بيوتنا قراصنة وهم جايين من بحر الألمانش إلى هنا.
And as we found with the British Empire, what started out as a commercial presence, a trading post, began to develop over time into a more established position, then backed up by the military and then by the arm of the British government. And of course, up until the independence of India, this area was run as part of India.
In the mid-19th century, the Gulf became a British protectorate, an outpost of empire. In 1873, it was incorporated directly into Britain's Indian administration. Just like that. British domination will leave a long-lasting mark on the inhabitants of the Gulf. The British need to pacify these strategic shipping routes, and they call the Emirates the trucial states. Truce? What truce? Using the need to quell piracy as a pretext, Britain rules the region, granting itself a monopoly on shipping routes. From Bahrain to Abu Dhabi, from Dubai to Doha, a common history is being forged. Abu Dhabi, population 2.3 million.
Would you like some milk?
David Hurd and his German wife, Frauke Hurd-Bey, have lived in Abu Dhabi for 50 years. He was an engineer in the oil industry, she a historian who has written extensively about the trucial states.
The trucial states, the name comes from the fact that in English, in Older English, truce is an agreement. A standstill agreement. And why a standstill agreement? It was originally concluded in 1820 with 11 sheikhs who all had their premises, if you like, or they were ruling from the coast. They were all coastal sheikhs, and it included, in fact, Bahraini sheikhs.
Was a protectorate. That is to say, it was we were responsible for the defense and foreign relations of the UAE or the Emirates. We weren't running their governments for them. So the sheikhs ran their governments and traded and met visitors and so on, and we were there if they needed us, except that in the sphere of defense and foreign relations, they were meant to, by treaty, they were meant to consult us first.
British government in India made agreements with each one of those rulers. They signed saying that they would not cede, not give any piece of land to any foreign power. That meant that nobody could have either a coaling station or a consulate or anything, or the end point of a railway or anything.
Even then, the Gulf was one of the major trade routes connecting east and west. Its merchants used a foreign currency, the Indian rupee, and migrant workers from faraway lands toiled in its ports. But for most people, daily life was extremely hard. Mohammed Al Fahim, now a successful businessman, remembers the Abu Dhabi of his childhood.
أبو ظبي بلد كانت بلد بدائية، يعني كانت قرية للصيادين السمك، صيادين اللولو. ما كان فيها لا شوارع لا عمار لا مقومات كهرباء.
He recalls at length the wretched conditions, the lack of schools and hospitals.
بدائية.
Abu Dhabi was just a fishing village, with houses made from palm fronds. Camels and donkeys were essentially the only forms of transportation. Malnutrition and infant mortality were high. Then, a real catastrophe for the region. This time the threat comes from, of all places, Japan. Mr. Mikimoto invents cultured pearls. In the 1930s, production really takes off, and the price of what was basically the Gulf's only commodity suddenly collapses.
نفس يوم الأزمة نحن في الغوص. أنا كنت عاد صغير يعني مو هذاك ما نعرف كم اللولو اللي أي فلوس ولا نعرف أي شيء صار ما حد يشتري اللولو مو كلش قطع واحد.
I mean, it was devastating for the population, and many people then had to try to return to the original resources, but many families just had no longer the connection to the interior of the country. And then soon after, of course, the Second World War came along, and the population was near starvation. Some people, some families.
أبو ظبي في سنة 1920 كان فيها يمكن 80,000 نسمة في أيام الغوص وأيام صيد اللولو. في سنة 1960 كان ما يزيد عن 2000 عدد سكان أبو ظبي. وكذلك الحال في باقي الإمارات المتصالحة، يعني وضعهم ما كان أحسن من أبو ظبي. توقفت تقريبا التجارة خلال أيام الحرب العالمية.
Entire fishing villages turn into ghost towns. There is poverty, terrible, devastating poverty. But just as the pearl trade is collapsing in the Gulf, prospecting for oil has already begun in the Middle East.
Longtemps, le Golfe s'est inscrit dans les intérêts de l'Inde britannique. Avec la découverte du pétrole au début du XXe siècle, ce statut change complètement. Le pétrole est découvert en Perse en 1908 et exploité dès l'année suivante par l'Anglo Oil Persian Company, qui est une compagnie étroitement liée à l'État britannique, puisque celui-ci, à la veille de la Première Guerre mondiale, en détient plus de la moitié des parts. Avec la découverte du pétrole en Perse, toute la région du Golfe devient éminemment stratégique pour les Britanniques.
With their massive oil fields, which had been discovered in the early 20th century, Persia, Iraq, and soon Saudi Arabia overshadow the Gulf Emirates. It isn't until the run-up to World War II that a glimmer of hope appears for the Emirates.
They first signed the agreement in Abu Dhabi in 1938, but then, of course, that was before the Second World War. There was not much activity during the war, and then they really started exploration activities in the 50s. And they first discovered oil in Abu Dhabi, both in the 50s, both onshore and then offshore.
It wasn't the world's most powerful nations, the USA, Britain or France, that annexed the starving little countries. It was rather Exxon, Total or British Petroleum. The great adventure of oil and gas was about to begin. Tribal leaders, emirs, Bedouins and out-of-work pearl divers were all in for a shock. Suddenly, Westerners began arriving in force. Engineers, scientists, managers, hardened rig crews and geologists. As well as hangers-on, mercenaries, more or less legitimate bankers and profiteers. And they all knew they were standing on a gold mine. A disorganized version of imperialism descended on the people of the Gulf. In their minds, this black gold was not necessarily more reliable than pearls had turned out to be. There was concern of a slide back into poverty when the resources from the bowels of the earth would be exhausted. That was the obsession of Sheikh Shakbut. He ruled over Abu Dhabi, the most oil-rich of the Emirates. He was accused by the West of failing to cope with the new economic realities.
Car pour eux, rien n'est encore transformé, ni pour leur prince, le Shir Shakbut bin Sultan, qui n'a rien changé à sa vie malgré la fortune, qui du jour au lendemain lui est revenu.
Sheikh Shakbut was in this really very, very difficult situation. And he was the boss. He had to hold the place together. And so he developed, therefore, more and more as being initially nervous, strongly supported by his uncle, Sheikh Khalifa, but nervous but effective as a ruler. He defended the country as a whole. It was under threat from Saudi Arabia.
And in 1952, a crisis broke out with Saudi Arabia over the disputed Buraimi Oasis. An American oil company backed the Saudis. Abu Dhabi's claim to the oasis, however, was backed by the British companies, and Sheikh Shakbut had to defend his territorial integrity despite the simmering conflict between the world powers over control of these oil-rich lands. However, as the years went by, the English were becoming ever more exasperated with the emir.
At first, Sheikh Shakbut kept his revenues in Indian rupees under his bed. Then, when the springs bulged, he moved his money to the cellar underneath the palace, and a year later, when the rats started to nibble, he reluctantly opened a bank account. Today, he's the owner of an outsized checkbook, although he's rarely persuaded to use it. When he first watched the first of the huge tankers leaving for the refineries in England, he must surely have begun to realize that while oil brings money, money brings change.
Shakbut really had little appetite for rapid development of the emirate, and it became apparent that his brother, Sheikh Zayed, was, if you like, a more outgoing, a more open-minded person who wanted to see things change, because the world was changing very rapidly in those days.
The name was out there, Sheikh Zayed, Sheikh Shakbut's brother and the oil company's favorite. Governor of El Ain, the country's second largest city, Sheikh Zayed is younger and more ambitious than his brother, and considerably more charismatic too.
الشيخ زايد كان بالنسبة لنا أب، عم، شيخ، حاكم. لعدم وجود أي دوائر حكومية أو أي نظام إداري، كان كل الأمور سواء اللي تخص حياة المواطن من مشاكل اجتماعية، مالية، إدارية، أي شيء ترجع للشيخ زايد، هو اللي يفتي فيها ويحلها. هو اللي كان الحاكم، القاضي، المنفذ، كل شيء.
El Ain is an oasis in the middle of the desert. Sheikh Zayed will develop its agriculture and irrigation and become a highly respected governor. The seat of his government in El Ain has gained tremendous influence in the emirate. At council meetings, Sheikh Zayed welcomes tribal chiefs who come to discuss social and economic issues. Meanwhile, 150 kilometers away in Abu Dhabi, power seems to be frozen in time.
Britain controls Abu Dhabi's foreign affairs and guarantees internal security. But she's no direct means of moulding domestic policy. Partly because of this, the country's £25 million development plan is still in the Sheikh's pending tray.
If Sheikh Shakbut had only watched TV, even if he had one, he would have known that the representative of Her Gracious Majesty was travelling to El Ain more and more often to have lunch with his new pal, Sheikh Zayed.
We prefer to deal with someone who had a more, I feel like, an international grasp of events and wanted to embrace it all when Sheikh Zayed took over in 1966, because then he was someone who was more ready to see change and develop his emirate. So the British were in favour of this change and assisted in it.
في سنة 1966 اتفقوا العائلة الحاكمة مع الشيخ زايد أنه بدل ما يكون هو ممثل الحاكم في العين يستلم الحكم في أبو ظبي ويصير هو الحاكم لأبو ظبي والعين. فالشيخ شخبوط طبعا استثني من هذه الاتفاقية، ما كان يعرف عن الموضوع.
August the 6th, 1966, Sheikh Shakbut is invited to take a break in Switzerland. For good. The way is clear for Sheikh Zayed.
At the wheel of this car is a man torn between two worlds. He's an Arab sheikh who was born in an old Arabia and will die in a new one. He worships Allah, loves the desert, and is one of the richest men in the world. His name is Zayed.
Everything was settled behind closed doors, and with a little help from his friends, the British, power stayed in the family. Sheikh Zayed floods the country with huge wads of cash extracted from under his brother's mattress. Schools, hospitals, and infrastructure spring up. A real industrial and moral revolution is set into motion. Zaki Nusseibeh, Sheikh Zayed's official translator, became a key figure. For decades, he rarely left the Sheikh's side and has remained a keen admirer.
C'était un homme de peuple. Ça veut dire à partir du petit matin, pour lui, un petit déjeuner même ne pouvait pas être pris seul. Donc il invitait toujours ceux qui étaient autour de lui, même ses corps de garde, même n'importe qui, pour venir partager son petit déjeuner. Il restait tout le temps ouvert à recevoir les gens. Il aimait les gens. Il ne pouvait pas même passer un jour sans contact avec son peuple. Il s'est déplacé partout dans les Émirats, non pas seulement à l'intérieur d'Abu Dhabi, mais dans les autres Émirats. Il s'est déplacé partout pour contacter les gens. Il parlait avec les hommes qui travaillaient pour lui en disant « Voilà, vous êtes responsable devant moi, je ne peux pas contacter chaque Émirien, mais c'est de votre devoir de me dire s'il y a un besoin quelque part. »
فابتدأ المشاريع من أول يوم استلم الحكم. فابتدت الحياة دب في الاقتصاد وفي المحلات وفي التجارة وفي بين المواطنين. بالإضافة أنه أعطى للمواطنين بيوت، أعطاهم أراضي، بنى لهم سكن، بنى لهم عمارات دخل. فحياتنا تغيرت.
Abu Dhabi, la capitale la plus riche du monde, a jailli du sable. Son shir, qui perçoit 3,5 millions de dollars par semaine grâce à ses royalties sur ses gisements de pétrole, a en quelques années rattrapé 2 siècles de retard. Notre problème, dit-il, n'est pas de savoir où prendre l'argent, mais de savoir comment le dépenser.
The West sneers at these little Arab nations who seem to have money to burn. A sort of irritated and somewhat disdainful paternalism sets the tone whenever anyone mentions these Arabs who have suddenly become wealthy, just as post-war prosperity in the West is drawing to a close.
En attendant que soit achevé son nouveau palais, le Shir Zayed abrite ses Rolls, Mercedes et Ferrari sous des bâches. Il ne se sert en effet de ces bolides que pour des pointes de vitesse sur l'autoroute de 150 km qu'il a fait construire entre sa capitale et la frontière de l'émirat de Dubaï. Et puisqu'il y a une autoroute et des voitures, pourquoi n'y aurait-il pas de feu de circulation? L'émirat de Dubaï, 3 fois plus peuplé, c'est tout autre chose. Son port, où toutes les races du Moyen-Orient se sont rassemblées, c'est le port de Hong Kong du Golfe Persique. Plaque tournante de tout ce qui va vers l'ouest ou vers l'est, c'est la ville de tous les commerces et de tous les trafics.
Dubai is ruled by Sheikh Rashid Al Maktoum, and no one contests his legitimacy. His emirate's growth doesn't depend only on oil, which won't be discovered there until 1966, but on trade.
His view of the world was purely economic. He wanted to attract as much as foreign capital as possible to build a modern country in Dubai. And he started that, which was, and this tendency to attract foreign investments.
It all started with gold and a semi-legal trade with their Iranian and Indian neighbors.
Mais cet or ne fait que passer. Coûtant 42 $ l'once à son arrivée à Dubaï, il est revendu 88 $ l'once aux Indes, où il parvient par des voies mystérieuses. En retour, l'Inde envoie du pavot, aussitôt réexpédié dans les laboratoires clandestins du Moyen-Orient, et des lingots d'argent qui font de Dubaï le second pays du monde importateur d'argent.
Dubai turns into a huge global trading post and a free enterprise paradise. A haven for smuggling, too. One can just imagine the number of spies, conspirators, and other shady types. After gold, it's the profitable trade with Iran that makes the fortune of the port of Dubai.
I remember people at the time saying, what does he want a big dry dock for? And they were puzzled by his ambition to build a big port here, and so on, Jebel Ali Port, which is now so big it can be seen from space. He had a lot of drive and had a vision which began with dredging the creek so that it became a centre where boats could come into, as it were, into the centre of Dubai, and they could be unloaded straight into the town. And Sheikh Rashid got the merchants together, raised the money, borrowed some money from Kuwait, dredged the creek, and it began to develop as a trading post, if you like, in the late 50s, early 60s.
The emirs frequently visit England, their great friend and protector. Their visits add up over the years. The emirs are rich, but their emirates are fragile. No police, no army, no truly independent institutions, no foreign policy, just a tribal organization that looks to the United Kingdom for support. Even the borders are vague. How can you draw a dividing line through the infinite sands?
لكن كيف تم زرع هذه المشكلة وخلق هذه المشكلة؟ لأن اللي كلف برسم الحدود في الإمارات كان أحد المعتمدين البريطانيين كان جوليان ووكر في 54، يمكن الخارطة موجودة عندنا. فقال لي إنه طلب مني المغفور له الشيخ زايد في عام 54 بأن أرسم الحدود للإمارات. فكنت أروح أجوب الإمارات كلها ومنطقة منطقة وقرية قرية وأسألهم أنتم تتبعون لأي شيخ؟ فقالوا نحن نتبع لشيخ النعيمي. فقلت لهم أنتم عجمان. فرحت في الشارقة أنتم تتبعون لأي شيخ؟ فقالوا لي نحن نتبع لشيخ الشرقي. فقلت لهم أنتم الفجيرة. وعلى هذا الأساس تم رسم خارطة الحدود على أساس الانتماءات للحكام.
And oil inspires greed. Just who actually owns these oil fields that seem to have sprung up from nowhere? Some little emirates hardly seem to remember their own names. Look, Ajman's number 1 has just arrived at the seat of his government. The Emir rules a population of 250,000 people. Ancestral tribal blood feuds, borders drawn by the British, and the roots of the creation of all these little states, is all that in the past now? Here's the Emir now. His Excellency Humaid bin Rashid Al Nuaimi. He doesn't seem to care for questions about his nation's borders.
هذا is part of such a tribal conflict in the old days. يعني. So it's better not to mention.
It was always part of Ajman?
Yeah,
and it was always Ajman when the country was established?
Who drew them? He doesn't know. He acts like he thinks it all goes back to the dawn of civilization. It's true that his territory is divided into 3. The capital, Ajman, is 60 kilometers from Manama, and Masfut is 100 kilometers away. That hard reality might appear far-fetched, but it seems to be a touchy subject for the Emir.
واليوم قارنين يعني الحركة العمرانية اللي في دولة الإمارات في أبو ظبي ودبي والإمارات الأخرى، الشعب الحكومة مع شعبها نعتبر أسرة وحدة، نشاطرهم بكل أمورهم، في أفراحهم في أحزانهم.
The Emir Sharjah is no better off than his counterpart in Ajman, with a country in the shape of a jigsaw puzzle with a few pieces missing. This peculiar geographical division is inherited from the 19th century. Treaties signed during the Protectorate were intended to help the British divide and conquer. But a century later, this territorial confetti considerably weakens the Emirates' position. And then, in 1968, there's a dramatic turn of events.
Les Anglais partent. Sir William Luce, ambassadeur itinérant et envoyé spécial de la reine d'Angleterre dans le Golfe, est venu faire le tour des Émirats pour annoncer aux souverains la décision prise par le gouvernement britannique de retirer ses troupes de la région avant la fin de 1971.
Suddenly, the Gulf Emirates are feeling very vulnerable indeed. They're rich, but everything else remains to be done. The British announce a withdrawal from the Gulf because the empire, by 1968, had seen better days. Economic crises, decolonization.
In those days, the popular press was talking about colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, all the wicked isms, and the British, of course, were getting quite a lot of stick here, there, and everywhere. And we felt that, of course, that it was totally undeserved, but never mind.
And the government was suddenly faced with the need to save money, I think, and they decided that they would cut our military presence east of Suez, and that meant that we would no longer be maintaining a military bases in the Gulf or in the region as a whole, and so we would have to withdraw from the Gulf.
En 68, quand les Anglais ont annoncé leur politique, leur intention de vouloir quitter la région, le pays du Golfe était vraiment apeuré parce qu'il n'existait pas une armée, il existait beaucoup de disputes autour. Avec ce pétrole, on disait mais comment est-ce qu'on peut assurer notre indépendance et souveraineté?
We know that Sheikh Zayed, for example, who realized that the gravity of the situation, that he actually offered to pay for British troops to be retained here for a time. But of course, the British government refused that kind offer.
Et on savait qu'il existait des problèmes entre les Émirats à cette époque-là. Il existait aussi des disputes avec les voisins. Donc, il existait un problème de sécurité majeur.
But an idea takes root. The people of the Gulf should form one large federation. Sheikh Zayed leads the negotiation. What should they build? The United States of the Gulf? Something based on the European model? Everyone starts dreaming of a major Arab country that would be a model of both stability and prosperity for the entire world. And besides, their survival depends on it. Sheikh Zayed, the new king of oil, will start by making an alliance with Sheikh Rashid, the king of commerce. An Abu Dhabi-Dubai axis is created after hard negotiation.
Au début, Sheikh Rachid de Dubaï était très soupçonneux. Il ne pensait pas possible de pouvoir établir un État moderne avec armée et tout. Sheikh Rachid était un homme très pratique. Pour Sheikh Rachid, la politique était une chose qui n'intéressait pas. C'est le business, c'est l'intérêt de l'État, c'est le commerce. Mais en effet, ils ont établi un contact très chaleureux.
The two men often meet in Sheikh Rashid's palace in Dubai. But in the emirate of Ras Al Khaimah, Emir Al Kazimi expresses misgivings about the dominant position the other two are taking. And in Qatar, Emir Al Thani is worried about his kingdom's sovereignty. From the emirate of Al Quwain, ruled by the Al Mualla family, to the emirate of Fujairah, from Ajman to Sharjah, the ruling families debate the future. The emirates are not all equally rich. Are they ready to lose their identity and their local influence by entering a federation that will obviously be dominated by Sheikh Zayed of Abu Dhabi and his friend Sheikh Rashid of Dubai? These are all family matters between tribes that haven't always been friendly. Sometimes there is little love lost even within a single family. Transfers of power can be real killers. Nephew murders uncle to take his place. Son deposes father while the older man is out of the country. Brother conspires in his own brother's assassination. Consultations follow consultations. The process will take over 3 years. The emirs meet, sign draft agreements, and change their minds.
At the time, Britain had this habit of trying to group its ex-colonies together. Although, as I said, these weren't colonies, these were protectorates. But a similar ambition was to group them together so that they would be better if they all stuck together in one bigger group. But for various reasons, mainly family and mainly geographical, the two northern ones, Bahrain and Qatar, went their own way.
هو كان طبعا الإمارات الثانية ما في مشكلة يعني في الإمارات، لكن كانت مشكلة قطر والبحرين في مواضيع في الخلاف، في سواء مواضيع الحدود أو القضايا تتعلق بالحدود أو القضايا تتعلق بالعملة. يعني كل دولة كان لها رأي في الموضوع، فلم يتم الاتفاق على هذه البنود.
Qatar declares its independence in September 1971. A few weeks later, the United Arab Emirates does the same. Nations are being born where locals remember that pearls were once the region's only wealth. What will these people of the Gulf do with their newfound freedom? What new society will they propose? The colours on the Emirates flag refer to the empires of Islam's golden age. Together, the four stripes symbolise the unity of the Arab nation. But almost as soon as it stands on its own, the region falters. Iran immediately invades the Tums, islands that it wants to reclaim from the UAE. Although they have fewer than 100 inhabitants, these specks of land are strategically located near the Strait of Hormuz, through which 2,000 oil tankers pass each year. The Persians take advantage of the precarious situation of the Arabs, now overconfident with their fancy federation.
Nous ne craignons pas les Iraniens, nous nous défendrons avec tous nos moyens.
5 Emirati policemen will be vastly outnumbered by the Shah's Marines. In the meantime, Saudi Arabia has already scored a few points. It has expanded its borders to Abu Dhabi's cost. Sheikh Zayed lets them get away with it. His invasive neighbors need to become his new protectors. What matters to him is stability for his new nation rather than war. Besides, with 3 cannons and a handful of planes, he wouldn't have a prayer of winning. Former Iraqi diplomat Adnan Pachashi, who went into exile in Abu Dhabi in the 1970s, soon becomes one of Sheikh Zayed's closest collaborators and a member of the first UAE government.
Sheikh Zayed, in fact, was very keen on improving these relations and ending any frontier dispute, and for that's why he made a lot of concessions. As a result, he said that we have enough oil of our own, so we give a few tracts of land which are rich in oil to others in order to have peace and security for our frontiers. Fine, because we have enough for our own needs.
In Qatar, the new nation is also getting off to a shaky start. Just 6 months after independence in February 1972, the emir's cousin, Khalifa bin Hamad Al Thani, uses the need to modernize as an excuse to oust the sitting monarch, who is accused both of opposing change and of personal enrichment on a vast scale. He goes on television to inform his people that from now on he is in control and nothing can get in the way of progress. The old emir flies out to a gilded exile in London. But soon the Yom Kippur War breaks out and upsets the balance of power as Egypt and Syria attack Israel. The main consequence of the conflict is the 1973 oil crisis. The Gulf states decide to increase the barrel price by 70%, and OPEC reduces its output in order to put pressure on Israel and its allies. The Emirates, Qatar, and the Arab world now realize that they can influence the economic future of the entire Western world.
And the oil embargo of 73, we saw energy prices skyrocket. And actually the initiation of what is arguably, by certain economists, the largest transfer of wealth in the history of mankind.
La crise actuelle nous fait basculer dès aujourd'hui dans l'ère du pétrole cher. Les difficultés d'approvisionnement, l'élévation des prix nous condamnent à limiter notre consommation. Mais est-ce possible ?
OPEC was founded in the 1960s, and Abu Dhabi is a long-standing member of OPEC. And OPEC has been an organisation which initially was formed to try to get a fair deal for the oil-producing countries from the international companies who really dominated the industry here in the 60s, and they decided production targets, they decided what prices would be set, and by setting the price they also determined the tax that was going to the producing governments. And then from 1973 onwards, the first oil crisis, oil prices jumped enormously, and suddenly it was the oil-producing countries who were very much in the dominant position.
There's a huge redistribution of wealth, the impact of which not many at the time can either fully appreciate or assess. The petro-monarchies are now major players, but the region's insecurity poses an underlying danger, and wars in the Gulf will soon threaten these oases of prosperity. Since the 1970s, the Gulf Emirates, led by families that have ruled for about a century, have undergone changes that are both dramatic and unprecedented in the Arab world. But contradictions and confusion remain. Archaic societies rush headlong into the vanguard of modern life, straddling the gap between the West and the Arab world, and all in a notoriously unstable region that has been through 3 wars in the last 30 years and seen an Islamic revolution in neighboring Iran. Yet whether native-born or expatriates, everyone there agrees that the bottom line is absolutely phenomenal and that a kind of euphoria reigns.
Mais c'est un paradis. This is paradise here.
In 40 years, life expectancy has shot up by 20 years. The literacy rate is more than 90%, and significantly, there are more than 200 cell phones per 100 inhabitants. And the emirs have spent $2,000 billion on modernizing their states. $2,000 billion. They had a lot of catching up to do, starting from poverty and desert sands, from nomads in a world without borders, punctuated only by the dunes and the waves of the Persian Gulf. Since the dawn of time, a hidden fortune had been lying beneath their feet. The first wells had been sunk just a few decades earlier. People spoke of black gold, of blue gold, as though the Emirates were a fiction, too good to be true. In one fell swoop, they tipped from one world into another. And since then, it seems like money has afforded infinite possibilities. Despotism and slavery, delusions of grandeur. It's fascinating and provokes cliches. The oil and gas that we need to feed our own expansion has supposedly spoiled their lifestyle. But they're rather pleased about it. In this part of the world, they have had to draw borders, establish order in the desert, and invent cities. Today, a triumvirate of city-states seems to share a common ambition. Doha in Qatar, Abu Dhabi and Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. 5 other, smaller emirates with little-known and mysterious-sounding names also make up the United Arab Emirates. Ajman, Ras Al Khaimah, Al Quwain, Fujairah and Sharjah. But what do we really know about them? Above and beyond the cliches, what are their beliefs, their projects, and what is their history? One of the most eminent historians of the Gulf just happens to be an emir. A short PR film informs us about the emir and his emirate few Westerners have heard of. Population 1 million, annual growth more than 10%. Oil has been produced since 1974 and gas since 1982. The good times were about to begin. His Highness Sheikh Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al Kazimi is a member of the Supreme Council of the United Arab Emirates and monarch of Sharjah. The historian Emir owns a museum that bears his name, which holds some small personal souvenirs. And one of the world's most extraordinary collections of antique maps. We can learn that the region used to be fairly inhospitable. This coast dangerous and chiefly inhabited by pirates. Pirates? Leave the capital, drive across a bit of desert, and you are there. Around us nothing but sand, but here, restraint and order bless luxury and voluptuousness. Now the sun goes down, tinting dike and town, field, canal, all things in sight, hyacinth and gold, all that we behold slumbers in its ruddy light.
If you stay here the whole day, you won't hear any noise. But here, there are nearly 70 people working, but you can't see them and you can't hear them because they have special corridor to go and special lift to go. And nobody will disturb this place except myself passing, going and coming. I built it for myself because there's no need disturbance, you know? Because if I am thinking of people, I'm thinking of writing, of thinking, I need calm place. So here I can sit the whole day in my library, nobody can come to me. This is Italian. This is done by Italian. هذا صناعة محلية سيراميك. في ناس يقولون شبيه بالقصر الحمراء يعني، لكن هذا أجمل. You see, I left it as it is, as sample, but this is all, cultivated by myself. That is my manzil, my house. Here is all I done it myself. Piece by piece. This is a book I'm writing now, Al-Qawasim under the British occupation. فهذه الخرائط تأتي متعاقبة مع الاستعمار الغربي في هذه المنطقة. فمنذ البداية كانت الخرائط فقط وصف بسيط يستعمله البرتغاليون، ولا يعطون أي معلومات حتى لا تقع في يد الأعداء. لو نرجع للتاريخ في سنة 1450 احتلوا الأتراك اسطنبول، وأعلن البابا من روما مقاطعة التجارة مع الشرق كاملة، فاتجه التجار والبحارة إلى البحث عن طريق إلى الهند. ولما وصل هنا فاسكو دي جاما اتصل بالهند وأخذ المنتجات الهندية إلى البرتغال.
This happy Arabia the Portuguese discovered in the 16th century is identical to the one filmed 60 years ago. For centuries, there were no cities to speak of in this part of the world. Encampments, oases, and fishing villages. But one flourishing place of commerce stood out in Qatar, Zubarah.
مدينة الزبارة يعني أقدم ذكر لهذه المدينة كان سنة 1600 يعني في هالفترة. كانت تسكنها قبيلة بن علي، سليم والمعاضيد من نفس القبيلة، وكانت فريحة أيضا قريبة منها، فأيضا كانت هذه من نفس القبيلة العربية، من قبيلة سليم. فهذه المدينة كانت صغيرة جدا، كانت قرية صغيرة، وكان سكانها يعتمدوا على البحرين للتمويل للغوص. بعد 1800 بدأت مدينة الزبارة تتعرض لكثير من الغزوات الخارجية، لأنها بدأت تصبح مطمع، لأن مدينة ثرية وغنية، فأصبحت مطمع لكل يعني حكومة قوية في المنطقة أن تستولي عليها وتسيطر عليها. إن سنة 1830 بدأت القوات التركية مع حكومة البحرين تفرض ضرائب عالية على سكان قطر، وبالتالي حتى يبتعدوا من مناطق سيطرة هذه الحكومات أيضا بدأت تنزح. ففي هذه الفترة الدوحة بدأت تتشكل كمدينة.
People in the Gulf were poor. Their only wealth came from the sea, and it wasn't just sardines. Some citizens actually managed to get pretty rich thanks to the pearl trade. It's a long story. Pearls are celebrated all around the Gulf, with varying degrees of elegance. For centuries, they were one of the rare economic activities in the region, from Kuwait to Dubai, via Qatar. Even so, the people of the Gulf didn't get much of a cut. Most of the profits went to Indian pearl traders in Bombay, where the pearls were then sold and shipped to Europe or America.
بالنسبة للغواصين، يعني كان الغوص بدون معدات، بدون أدوات غوص حديثة، بدون أجهزة اسطوانات ضغط، بدون نظارات، يعني كانت متعبة جدا. الغوص الحر فقط يعني هي كتم النفس، ينزل ما إنه ينزل، أول ما ينزل بالحصى، والديين تكون على وديين لابس الديين، أول ما ينزل يكتم النفس لين ما يوصل للقوع، ويقوم بجمع المحار لفترة دقيقتين أو دقيقة و40 ثانية إلى 3 دقائق. الغواص هذا يكون يعني المخضرم مثل ما نقول نحن، نوصل إلى 3 دقائق أو دقيقتين ونص ويطلع.
Former Emirati pearl divers are now subsidized by the government, which provides them with a house, a 4-wheel drive, and even a majlis, or gathering place. They are now part of the native elite.
والله الغوص تعب الأول، وايد تعب، يصيرون 3 شهور 4 شهور عن علم، يمدون مني في الصيف ويجون في ترى القيط، ياخذون في الغوص 3 شهور و4 شهور 3 شهور. هذا اللي الحجن عليه، اللي غيرنا قبل يقولون 4 شهور ياخذون في البحر، ويمدون ثاني ويمدون ثالثة، الرد يسمونه. هذا اللي هو الغوص.
إلى سلمة الشمس كل واحد
اللي محصول ماله من المحار من هذا الصدف هذا أكل ماشي غير تمر وعيش بس، ويبي وحده الرز بالليل، والتمر الصبح والظهر وبالليل شوي هذا، والماء يعني كوب استكانة شاي هذه بس كل واحد.
The pearl trade grows into a colossal enterprise. Global transactions from Antwerp to New York, Paris and London establish the Gulf people's cosmopolitan credentials. Huge empires are created that are still influential financial players today, like Al Fardan, a former pearl trader from Qatar who diversified his fortune. Banks, jewelry, luxury car dealerships, real estate. But that fortune, which his private museum gives a sense of, started with pearls. An inscrutable private secretary reels off sums that boggle the mind.
12,350,000, 6 million, can say $2 million, 35 million.
هنا أتى البريطانيين وأتوا رحالة وتجار. The British had felt obliged to go into the Gulf to stop piracy because pirates were coming out of the Gulf from the islands, particularly near the mouth of the Gulf, and preying on shipping going to India.
جايين احنا في بيوتنا قراصنة وهم جايين من بحر الألمانش إلى هنا.
And as we found with the British Empire, what started out as a commercial presence, a trading post, began to develop over time into a more established position, then backed up by the military, and then